Hey, Dane Cash here, just taking a quick moment to tell you to check out the Escape Collective fantasy game ahead of the Tour de France. Whether you're a big bike racing nerd like me, or just like watching the world's biggest race every year, it's a pretty awesome way to augment your enjoyment of the race with a very straightforward competition. You can also play with your friends. All you have to do is pick one rider for every stage of the race. You get points for how they perform, and you can only pick a rider one time throughout the race, so you got to be judicious about it. But that's pretty much it. So there's not a whole lot to learn. There is a whole lot of fun to be had, especially if you join a mini league with your friends and you can battle for bragging rights. Head over to escapecollective.com/fantasy. Check it out. Start playing.
Welcome, everybody, to the Escape Collective Tour de France Daily. I'm Caley Fretz. With me, Jonny Long. Jonny, set the scene for me, because it's a good one. It's a good scene to kick off with.
We're back again. It's a good scene. There are people. I can hear Italian in the background, which is a good sign. We landed in Nice. We escaped across the border as soon as we could. Looking out, I got up so early this morning, I don't even know what ocean I'm looking out onto.
This is the Mediterranean.
Fantastic. Don't usually see this. This is the Mediterranean Sea. We just had a delicious lunch. There's people cycling past on the bike path. There's holiday makers eating ice creams. I just had an ice cream.
It looked really good.
It was really good. And have I said this thing? We're in a town. We're a town between Nice and San Remo.
Yeah.
Called...
Termini is maybe the closest one. It's not that far away from here. I think that maybe is where we are.
Sorry, I haven't set the scene in a while, so it might take me like a couple of goes to get back into it.
There's a fountain.
Oh, there is. I didn't even notice the fountain.
Out.
There's an Italian flag. There's palm trees. There's old buildings with shutters.
We just had a lovely lunch.
The waiter did think I was German when I sat down, which, you know what? You can't start off by taking offense if you're going to last 3 weeks at the Tour.
And we're here to talk about the Tour de France, because that's where we're headed. We're driving from Nice to Florence. Florence is obviously where the Tour de France is going to be kicking off in a couple days' time here. And you hopefully already listened to the massive route preview that Dane and Cosmo did over on How the Race Was Won. This is going to be more of a storylines / contenders / people, interesting stuff that we have picked up on. It's going to be that preview, I think, of the Tour de France. So
the vibes preview.
It's the vibes preview, yeah. And the vibes so far are impeccable.
You had an espresso after your lunch.
Whew,
You're really
ready to go.
There were a couple of times where you were just sort of looking into the middle distance, and I couldn't tell if you were just like, having your main character energy, just being in Italy, or it's just you're sort of jet lagged after spending 24 hours in transit.
My Whoop says my recovery score this morning is 2%. Good. So not a great way to start.
Well, I'm glad you're driving the 6 hours to Florence. Yeah.
Let's talk about the Tour de France. So, like I said, we're going to do a bit of a sort of contenders analysis and sprinters and all that sort of stuff. The big names, like what are the big stories that we're looking forward to over the next couple of weeks? We'll talk a little bit about the route in case you did miss Dane and Cosmo's podcast earlier this week. And then we'll talk a little bit about, I guess, what is coming from us over the next couple of weeks. So I guess first and foremost, before we get anywhere, the Escape Collective Fantasy Leagues are kicking off right now. And we just added a new feature here where your league actually competes with other leagues, including competes with the Escape staff. So I think the way that they ended up doing it was they take the average score of your whole league, and that's like the league score for the day. And so we've got not just a ranking of individuals, but you and your buddies can compete against other people and their buddies this year.
More pressure.
Head to escapecollective.com/fantasy and check that one out. Jonny, we are currently, as of recording, 4 days out.
Yes, Wednesday, is it?
It's Wednesday.
Cool.
It's going up on Thursday. What are the major storylines heading into this Tour de France that we have our eye on?
The main one that I've sort of been coming back to mentally for the past day or so is Marc Madio saying that Tadej Pogacar is going to win the Tour de France within the first 3 or 4 days. I'm not sure if that's, Marc Madio, been in the sport a long time, mostly seems to know what he's talking about. It's hard to tell. He also hates Richard Plugger and Visma Leasebike, so it's hard to know whether he's just trolling them. But
deeply.
We were kind of we brought this up naturally at lunch.
Yeah.
Just talking about, well, that could be likely because it's a tough start, and it's the Galibier within on day 4.
Day 4 is the Galibier. So yeah, let's start with a brief overview of what this first week is going to look like, and I think that's the way we tend to do these previews. So we'll talk about this first week, and then obviously we have plenty of time to talk about subsequent weeks. First week, we start in Florence, stage 1, tons of climbs. It's like peppered with second, third, fourth category climbs. Goes up and over the mountains, and then finishes in Rimini, which is going to be right next door to where Marco Pantani died, actually. There's a lot of sort of like Pantani connections actually in this particular Tour de France. And if we go back to 1998, not only is that the year of the last Giro Tour double, which is a potential that we're going to look at in this month, there's also just like little nods. Like I said, the stage 1 finishing in Rimini, the Galibier featured really heavily in that 98 tour. There's a whole bunch of sort of small things that we'll point out as we go throughout the month. Stage 2, another really difficult, lumpy one, peppered again with Cat 3 and Cat 4 climbs. This one has a nasty little Cat 3, only about 18, 20K from the finish line. Stage 3 is probably a sprint stage. And then stage 4, as you referenced, Jonny, is the first mountain stage. So we start in Turin, we end in Valois. It goes up through the valley there, goes up the quote-unquote easier side of the Col de Galibier, 23 kilometers at a mere 5.1%. That one does kind of, well, it's not easy. It's the side where if people think back to the Cadel Evans tour, I believe, 2011, and it was sort of like Evans and Schleck and Thomas Vogler was in the yellow jersey, I think, on that day. That day in the Galibier was still enough to basically blow up that race. I think it could be enough to blow up the race again this year. So yeah, as of stage 4, I mean, basically what Marc Madio is saying, stage 4, we could have a Tadej Pogacar lead of a significant margin already.
And what this comes back to for context, the people who've literally just tuned in to the Tour Daily after emerging from a rock where they've spent the past 11 months since the last Tour Daily, is that Jonas Vingegaard obviously had his crash at the Basque Country, had quite a long and intense road to recovery, and got announced a week ago, I think, that he was actually going to be at the Tour de France alongside Wout van Aert. But for a while, the team were sort of playing it cool and coy, being like, we're not sure if he's going to be fit in time, let alone be able to challenge for a third yellow jersey in a row. And Tiege Benoot was interviewed on Monday, I believe, and he said none of us are putting any money on Vingegaard winning. But at this point, you don't know what's smoke and mirrors and what's not.
Yeah.
But the one thing is for sure, Tadej Pogacar's come out and said, I'm feeling really, really good. Which I think you only say if you are feeling really, really good, unless that's another bluff. But I think when Pogacar says he's feeling really good, he is.
Other Visma Lease Bike news this week as well.
Oh, we should have led with this, actually.
The Eagle of Durango has fallen. Sepp Kuss had a bout of COVID a couple weeks ago and apparently has not adequately recovered from that bout of COVID. He will not be taking the start.
That's sad.
Which is a real bummer. Like a real bummer.
Will he defend his Vuelta title?
Well, so that's maybe the silver lining on this, which Jonas Vingegaard has already said that he is not going to be at the Vuelta because I think he's got some family stuff. The specifics of that have not been released, but something family related. And that, of course, opens up the opportunity for Sepp Kuss to defend that title. The Vuelta obviously has become a bit of the last chance saloon for GC riders in a given year. And so somebody else will probably have a difficult time here at the Tour de France and will end up at the Vuelta as well. But we have all of the big names at this tour.
It's the first time that the big six, as they've been called, which I kind of like, kind of don't like, at a race together. So that's Jonas Vingegaard, Tadej Pogacar, Wout van Aert. I'm counting on my fingers because you guys can't see that back home. Mathieu van der Poel, Remco Evenepoel, Primož Roglic. I think that's the most interesting other guy. I mean, aside, Van der Poel and Van Aert will do their thing, right? They'll win their own stages, help their teammates win stages. Evenepoel, I think there's huge probably question marks on just how he can match up to Vingegaard and Pogacar. But Roglic, who also was not necessarily that badly affected from that Basque Country crash, but has had to adapt to a new team, the question is how he will go up against Pogacar and Vingegaard, and whether he can take advantage of one coming in after the Giro, one coming in off the back of injury. But I think people are just worried that something's gonna happen. Well,
so this is the interesting thing about this particular Tour de France is normally we come into the Tour and it's really clear there's usually a pretty clear favorite, right? And I think there is a clear favorite, but there's this sort of like, it's a 50-50 split between people who think this is one of the most open Tours de France in a very long time. And the argument in favor of that is the two heavy favorites, Jonas Vingegaard and Tadej Pogacar, are coming in without ideal preparation, right? So Vingegaard obviously had a big crash, was in the hospital for, I think, over a week, slowly coming back from that. But Tadej Pogacar did the whole Giro, and nobody has done a Giro Tour double since 1998, Marco Pantani, right? So neither of them came in sort of in ideal circumstances. And the argument is thus that some of the second-tier contenders, which would be probably primarily Remco, Evenepoel, and Primož Roglic, a little bit of...
Did you say Remco, Evenepoel, and Primož Roglic?
Yeah.
Nice. Giving him 2 shots.
Yeah. Well, and you can add a couple other riders to that. Maybe. I mean, I think that the chance of 2 UAE riders on the podium is not zero, right? And Adam Yates alongside of Pogacar. Anyway, point being that if you sort of decrease the level of Vingegaard and Pogacar by making the lead-in less than ideal, it does open the door for maybe one of these sort of like somewhat second-tier contenders. The opposing argument is that one of the two of those, Vingegaard and Pogacar, and most likely Pogacar, is going to just absolutely blow everybody out of the water, right? Because maybe if Vingegaard, like if you took just last year's Tour, if Vingegaard wasn't there, Pogacar wins that race by a lot, right? Instead, Vingegaard was there, Pogacar has a bad time. Yeah. Vingegaard wins it by a lot. Everybody who's not those two is way, 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 way off the mark. So again, these sort of two opposing views of the way that this Tour de France is going to play out. Of course, at the moment, nothing but speculation.
And the only thing, if it does turn out to be a Pogacar dominant tour, is at least it will be entertaining while it happens, right?
True.
He will be doing it by trying to win like 5 stages.
Yep.
Mad attacks. He won't just follow the wheel.
So I think that's an interesting point in favor of what Matteo is saying. And again, Mark Matteo is saying that this race could be basically over by the end of the first week, is that I also think that Pogacar is going to want to do that, right? Because he's looking at the way that Vingegaard is recovering from this injury, coming back to form. He doesn't want to give Vingegaard time to ride into form, right? So if he can take 5 minutes out of him on the Galibier, he's going to do that, right? So he's not going to keep his powder dry and wait. If he can take a bunch of time in the first week, he's absolutely going to
also
take that time.
In Unchained, we saw the psychological battle that goes on between these two heavyweights who only really have each other to look at. So if Pogacar lands a few heavy early blows, then what does that do to Vingegaard, who's maybe unfairly been dismissed sometimes as not being the strongest mentally in that way? I'm not sure why that's come from. I think a lot of it's maybe conjecture, but you can definitely see if Pogacar suddenly has like 3 or 4 minutes and then it's Vingegaard who has to take the race to Pogacar instead of the other way around. That's something. Maybe this is Vingegaard's arc from villain to hero. It's all about narratives, right? The Tour does it for us, but then we have to layer narratives on top.
Yeah, it's funny that like there is definitely a villain arc for Jonas Vingegaard right now, right? It was visible in the Unchained Netflix series, but I think even more broadly, if you just sort of like look at our comment section, for example, there's a lot of Pogacar fans, and there seems to be fewer Vingegaard fans at the moment, but if you take yourself back a couple years after Pogacar had been super dominant for 2 years in a row.
Fans.
Yeah, exactly.
They're just the Slovenians.
We love a lovable loser, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that maybe that is what Vingegaard needs to win the hearts of the cycling public.
We just really need Roglic or Evenepoel to be up to scratch.
Yeah.
Like, that's what will make this from being like a good or very good tour into a great tour. Because I feel we've done the Pogacar Vingegaard thing and it is very entertaining and great when we have a close tour. But adding a third to the mix, it's like that US Office scene where Will Ferrell asks someone to throw him like the 5th juggling ball. Have you seen that?
Yes.
It's sort of like that, and it's like, wow, okay, now we're really going to ratchet it out.
Who else is worth talking about from a GC perspective? I think Carlos Rodriguez from Ineos is probably up there.
Well, Ineos will be hoping so. After sort of their press release announcing their team, said that Bernal and Rodriguez would be the leaders, and Pidcock has been put in another sort of bucket with Geraint Thomas where they'll be helpers but also allowed to do their own thing and attack and help the leaders that way, which seems like it's not maybe going to work. But yeah, Carlos, 4th last year. I think he's aiming for a top 5. That's the thing now, is the way that teams are all reframing their objectives for this tour, is that if you read through the press releases, everyone says they want a stage run, of course, but then a lot of these GC contenders outside of the main 4 are all either saying we want a top 5 or even a top 10 because they just realize how big the golf is to try and do that. But that was his first tour last year, right? Carlos Rodriguez. So
first tour, he was 22. He's now 23, so he's still very young. Yeah,
but maybe. I mean, that would be interesting. I think then particularly me, would have to eat a lot of humble pie from any sort of Ineos criticism because they put their eggs in the right basket.
Yeah, I think he's a pretty good shout for the white jersey, best young riders jersey. I think that's...
Oh, yeah, because Pogacar's out of it this year, isn't he?
Pogacar is out of it for the first time.
Yeah.
And is Almeida... He's 25, so I think Almeida maybe still qualifies. But Almeida's really the only other one that would be in contention for that. There's a couple other names
Remco?
that are...
Is Remco white jersey? God, everyone's getting old, but they're not old yet. Or is that just me showing my age
24,
now?
so it could be maybe a three-way battle between those three.
Ayuso. There's so many. You never know though how
So that's the thing is there are a lot of riders that sit in that kind of the non-Vingegaard, Pogacar, but like contenders for the top 10 bucket, right? Like there's a huge number of them, and you could go all the way down to if Vingegaard has a bad tour, if he has not fully recovered and gotten his form back from that big crash, next in line at Visma Lease Bike,
say it,
Matteo Jorgensen.
Yes.
No, but it's true. Like, won Paris-Nice already this year, had a really strong Dauphiné. Like, he is a genuine contender for a top 5.
I hope so.
Yeah.
I hope so.
I think it would be a top 5 would be an incredible result from him.
It'd be huge. But even like, I'm looking down the list here and it's literally more than a dozen riders. Even Geraint Thomas should, and for all intents and purposes, like he's always been the one who's the most third, right? Behind Vingegaard and Pogacar.
He's super third.
And we look at the list and it's like, but Ayuso or, Roglic or, Carlos Rodriguez. But Geraint Thomas. If he came third this year, it would be the most third he's ever been.
It would be the most third. I want to refocus on Remco Evenepoel real quick because there's a bit of a story around his team. Soudal Quickstep, which as they've won a Tour de France stage like every year for the last 15 years or something like that, 14 years. I can't remember exactly how many years. Many, many, many years they've been winning Tour de France stages. They are coming to this race without a sprinter for the first time in a long time. They are coming to this race entirely built around Remco Evenepoel, which is something that they haven't really tried yet. They're fully in as a GC team, which is something a bit at the Tour specifically, a bit unusual for them. And Remco himself is sort of the least proven at this particular event, right? He won the time trial at the Dauphiné, but didn't sort of overall have a particularly good
struggled, which he said he would. But even if you would say that you're going to struggle, it's still not a good sign. No space for Kasper Asgreen, their stage winner last year, which is interesting. Yves Lampart's still there, who likes to pop up with a stage win.
So they do have, they have a couple sort of stage hunter options if, for example, Remco is clearly off the pace quite early, which I think, they'll know stage 4, right? Like on the Galibier, we will find out whether Remco Evenepoel is capable of contesting the Tour de France or not. It will come quite early. They do have a couple other options, like you say. I think Yves Lampart is probably among the best. Shoot for some kind of... I love Italy. Shoot for
everyone's got a scooter.
Everyone's got a scooter. Shoot for some kind of breakaway stage win or something like that. But that team, they're putting all their eggs in a basket that I'm trying to get where would I take that analogy? They put the eggs in the basket, so the basket I guess would be Remco that might have holes in it. I don't know. Where's the analogy
go? The wicker
go?
is not necessarily that tight, and the eggs could slip through. I don't know. I don't have baskets or eggs. The one thing is that if Remco's GC bid falters, the best stage hunter they have on that team is Remco.
Yeah.
Who can then just go off on stage 17 and take 5 minutes back and just be like, oh, well, there we go. There you go, Patrick.
Yep.
That justifies my existence for, another year.
Let's talk about the two teams that will support the number 1 and 2 favorites. So we have UAE versus Visma Lease Bike. Last couple years, Visma Lease Bike, Jumbo Visma last year, has been the strongest team in the race by a fair margin. Mm-hmm. There's a bunch of really big changes this year, not least of which is losing Sepp Kuss. They've never won a Grand Tour without Sepp Kuss on the roster.
Really?
Really.
Wow.
The Eagle of Durango is key. They don't have Roglic anymore, right? Roglic was also pretty crucial in Vingegaard's first victory. And then you've got UAE on the other side, which Machin Fernandez, the sort of like, I guess, head sports director, manager guy over there, told Dan Benson that it's the strongest team they've ever brought to the Tour de France.
Oh, by far.
And it's obvious just by looking at it that it is the strongest team they've ever brought to the Tour de France. I mean, you could make a pretty good argument for them sweeping the podium at the Tour in the same way that Visma Lease Bike did at the Vuelta last year, right? Like you could see on some planet some combination of Pogacar, Juan Ayuso, Almeida, and Yates all ending up on a Tour de France podium.
Well, if you didn't have a Pogacar-sized talent there, then you'd have a huge who's the real leader debacle and debate in the lead up to it. But Pogacar's that much better that it means that you can have these guys who could be GC leaders in their own right more than happy to fill super domestique duties because you've got a talent just that outsized on the roster.
I mean, you sort of like picture in your head a front group on stage, let's call it stage 19.
Okay.
Embrun to Isola 2000, 144 kilometers. Goes over two massive ore category climbs, the Col de Var and Cime de la Bonnette, and then finishes up at Isola 2000, the ski resort. You can very much picture like the second HC climb of the day. You've got a group, it's down to 10. 5 of those are UAE at that point.
Yeah, I mean, how much do you think that's going to affect their tactics? Or do you think they're just bringing more firepower because they envisaged they would be up against a full-strength Visma Lease bike where they need to match man for man against the likes of Sepp Kuss? They've had so many crashes this year. They've lost Wilco Kelderman. He's got a broken collarbone, does he?
Yep.
Dylan Valbala's not necessarily climbing, but he's a key guy for them. It's such a...
Visma's had just
it's not a bootstrap team,
luck.
but it's just like... Yeah. It's half of the team that they would ideally like to be taking, you think?
Yeah, and that UAE team is built to counteract exactly the way that Vingegaard won the Tour 2 years ago, right? Which was essentially a team effort. Roglic attacking, taking time back and forth out of Pogacar. It is intended to have multiple riders alongside Pogacar basically at all times, with the exception being like the last 10 minutes of some of these climbs where he's going to, go off and Vingegaard will hopefully be able to follow, right? That is a new thing for them. I mean, Rafa Majka has been really, really key to supporting Pogacar over the years, but Majka is not at the level that, Adam Yates is, for example, at this point in time in his career. Yeah. And he's not even at the race. Yeah. But it's an upgrade is what I'm saying. Yeah. The Yates and Almeida are an upgrade on Rafa Majka. So I think sort of the third team in terms of GC potential is obviously going to be Bora Hansgrohe, which has Primoz Roglic in its ranks and is probably on paper the only team that can come close to matching UAE in the mountains specifically. And the reason why is the presence of Jai Hindley, Giro d'Italia winner, right? Vlasov, I think, is going to be very, very key. And then they've got this sort of pile of pretty strong ruler types as well. Danny Van Poppel, Marco Haller, Bob Jungels. Jungle Bob, for a little while, we were talking about him as a GC contender himself, right? Very, very strong team at Bora. Do we think this is enough to take it to either Visma or UAE? I mean, it's still not a scratch on UAE, but it feels stronger than Visma to me.
I would say it entirely depends on how good the new Red Bull kits look.
So it looks like it's releasing today. So by the time you listen to this podcast, I think you'll all know. But someone
navy one that's
someone shot a photo of the bus, and it's the same navy as that leaked kit. So maybe the leaked kit is actually what we're going to end up with here.
Okay, knee-jerk, nonsensical reaction is that kit just needs a bit more silver for me to truly believe that Roglic is going to really trouble those podium spots for this Tour. But who knows? I mean, it'd be great for that to happen. Jai Hindley's super strong, had a great Tour last year. And I think probably because he got the stage in the yellow last year. He did get the stage, didn't he? Yeah. Yes. That he can probably look at this Tour and be like, you know what? That was amazing last year. I'm probably not going to top that if I'm very lucky. So I'm happy to go all in for Roglic. Maybe Vlasov's the same. He signed a new contract, I think, recently. Everything. When you approach a Tour, all of the news of the past 6 months kind of gets jumbled in your head. But it's gonna be super tough to look at Roglic in that light. I don't know. I think the fact that I forgot about him when we were counting out the big six. Maybe that's just my ignorance, but I think it speaks to how he's stumbled in the power rankings in terms of.
Yeah, I don't think he strikes fear
in the same way
he did
a
couple years ago,
and that used to be a huge fear.
Yeah,
that robotic Alex Roos fridge-like fear. I want them to do really well. I think it's a great story if Roglic manages to even come close to it. And the supporting cast are, super talented, but it's just hard to view them on the same level. That's why they're still doing a lot of, supposedly doing lots of business in the transfer market of getting these guys who will take them to that next level in terms of climbing domestics.
Yeah, I think Bora is an interesting one to watch over the next couple of years, but maybe this year isn't quite ready yet.
Yeah.
Which is unfortunate for Roglic because this is his year, right? Like, if there's a year he's going to win the Tour, it's this year because we've got a Vingegaard who's coming off injury, we've got a Pogacar who's coming off the Giro. Like, that is not going to happen next year, right? The chance of both of them not being 100% next year, very, very slim. So this is Roglic's year, and unfortunately, the team is very good. Like I said, it's the only one that kind of comes close to being able to match UAE, but it's probably just not quite there yet. I'm really intrigued to see how they use Jai Hindley, because if Jai is left as sort of a second GC option, that's one thing. I feel like he may be better used, kind of held in reserve a bit more, lose some time, take some easy days. Because if he does that, if he takes some easy days and gets some recovery, more so than the true GC contenders, he's probably going to be more useful to Roglic in those key moments, right? Because otherwise you would expect in those key moments that Hindley's probably gone. This is very much the way that Visma has traditionally used Sepp Kuss as well. Sepp will basically take days off, right? Like, he will spend days just tail gunning in the back, losing tons of time, and that allows him to recover and then do his job exceptionally well in the moments where he's really needed. And if I was sitting here and I'm Rolf Aldag, the director over at Bora, that's probably the way that I'm approaching the use of Hindley, Vlasov, less so Jungle Bob.
What about the one guy who can take it to Pogacar and Vingegaard, Richard Carapaz?
Our Jonathan Vaughters Understanding the Assignment Award returns once again. EF has said that they're chasing stages, really.
Oh, not really.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Carapaz is probably going to go for, he'll see what he can do, right? Yeah. He is a Giro champion, but I think primarily they're going to be stage hunting. And if you look at the lineup that EF has,
Ben Healy,
I can't wait to see Powless. You've got Bissiger for the stage 7 time trial. Is that the day that it is? I believe it's stage 7. There's one flat time trial and one the last time trial of the race. Because the race finishes in Nice with a time trial, not Paris with a sprint. That last time trial is not really a Stefan Bissiger TT, but yeah, they've got a crew for stage hunting. I mean, even the inclusion of like Rui Costa, right? Like Rui Costa is the ageless man at this point. Like, he's just been cruising around, former world champion, has won a handful of Tour de France stages, pretty much entirely out of breakaways, known to be one of the real premium wheel suckers of the entire peloton.
Big old bastard.
Yeah. But hey, that wins you Tour stages, so no.
So that counts.
People don't care after a couple of years.
To round out our preview of the sort of more minor GC figures, we could talk about Simon Yates, but like Adam Yates, but maybe not as good. Moving on to David Gaudu, Groupama FDG. FDG?
FDG.
Already in French mode. He had COVID.
Yeah.
So he missed the French National Championships. He's probably the one Groupama FDG rider out of like 28 who didn't do the French National Championships, because I think you have to. Also, it might mean that he's not snogging as much, which Ian, I think maybe misconstrued and thought maybe Gaudu wasn't going to come to the Tour. And Ian's reaction to that news was more than I've seen him react to other much more serious, just general peril in his life.
I think it'll be more snogging. Because he can't get it again so soon.
I see.
Right? He's in the clear.
That's true. That is true. I forgot my pandemic logic already. Okay, so we'll be on notice then to watch out.
Groupama is also bringing Lenny Martinez, which I think is very interesting inclusion. Lenny is a very young rider who's
isn't he supposed to be off to Bahrain?
This may be his last tour with Groupama, and he's a young French rider. This is a French team. It's a match made in heaven. He's still only 20.
And he looks it.
He does look it. He won the Tour of the Alps Maritime at the end of May. Finished 8th overall at the Tour de Romandie. As a couple different one-day wins throughout the year. Won the youth classification at Catalonia. Yeah, he's an incredible rider at 20 years old. Also, he's the son of an Olympian mountain biker. I think he's an interesting inclusion. They were sort of the French teams have tended to be slower to bring these young superstars into the Tour de France team in particular. They kind of take a slightly more old school approach to it, where like they'll put him in the Giro, the Vuelta first, but apparently they think he's ready.
Maybe it's the last gambit to try and convince him to stay. I think we'll be able to pretty much tell from Marc Madio's general mood if he's going or leaving. He doesn't really have much of a poker face in those sorts of things.
Speaking of leaving,
oh yeah,
Romain Bardet's last tour.
Yes,
which is we had just started raining.
It is raining.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Lovely. We had Thibaut Pinot's last tour last year. We had Virage Pinot, the famous corner where all of his friends came out and cheered for him. It looks like we're set to have a Virage Bardet this race, so we'll have to go check that out at some point.
I'm looking forward to going. I feel like it's kind of trying to capitalize on that, the Virage Pinot last year, and it's sort of like that meme where it's like, we have Virage Pinot at home. Like, Mum, I want Virage Pinot, I've got Virage Pinot home, and it's actually Virage Bardet.
Oh, that's rough on Bardet.
Okay,
I like Romain Bardet.
I like Romain Bardet as well, but what we can all agree is he's not Thibaut Pinot.
No, I think he's less of a French sort of heartthrob for sure.
He's got closer to winning the Tour though.
Got way closer to winning the Tour. I mean, Romain Bardet
probably a better rider.
Probably a better rider. I think he's definitely a better rider. Romain Bardet is like, his natural habitat, to me anyway, is like in kind of a film noir, like.
You mean real life?
Basically.
In a turtleneck.
Yeah, no, but like leather jacket over a turtleneck with a book under his arm.
He's one of the thinkers of the peloton, and he's always been, very insightful.
Yeah.
And is a great sort of addition to the tapestry of the peloton. So it will be sad to see him go, but I'm just saying, I don't take back my joke. I'm just trying to qualify it.
I feel like we should apply some sort of award this tour for the thinkers. Like we don't need to go negative. We don't need to like, you're not a thinker kind of award, but like we should reward the thinkers, because we discussed this a little bit in the Unchained pod, which everyone should go listen to, by the way. But like some of them, they kind of surprise you with how like eloquent they are.
Mahoric?
Yeah, Mahoric is a perfect example. Askren is a perfect example.
So what are you thinking? Like Sudoku books? That pick up from the petrol stations?
Maybe.
Okay, we'll have a think.
All right, so we've kind of talked through the GC contenders there, the teams there, the folks that will support those GC contenders. The other major storylines that are going to be obviously coursing through this Tour de France will be the sprints. And there's a pile of them.
8, I think.
Roughly 8. Kind of depends on how exactly you define a sprint, because this opening week, unsurprisingly, we are in Italy. It's going to feel a bit like the Giro. And a lot of times when you look, like for example, stage 3 kind of looks like a sprint stage, but then is it? There's a Cat 4 climb not that far from the finish line, so maybe not. It all depends on how exactly you define a sprint stage and how everyone ends up riding. I mean, if you recall last year, right, nailed on sprint stage, the one that Kasper Asgreen won out of a breakaway. Jasper Philipsen back in his team bus yelling "impossible" in Dutch. Anything can happen, right? But yeah, in theory, roughly 8 sprint stages, and the man to beat in those sprints is going to be Jasper Philipsen once again. It was last year. It will be again this year. He's got the strongest team. He's got the best lead out. He has Mathieu van der Poel working for him in the finale, right? Like, Van der Poel is a phenomenal lead out these days.
Lead out man in the business.
Well, I would say sort of skill wise, Michael Morkov, who is with
true.
Mark Cavendish, is the best lead out man in the business. But in terms of just like raw power, being able to solve problems with raw power, Mathieu van der Poel.
Well, who'd you rather have if you're a sprinter?
Oh, Van der Poel.
Yeah,
100%. Although I think if I'm Cav,
you want Morkov.
I want Morkov because if Cav wins a sprint this month, it'll be because of positioning, not power, right? So you want the guy who's going to drop you to the meter, right? Like exactly where you need to be at the right moment, and that is going to be Michael Morkov. So other sprinters of note, Arnaud Delis, who just won Belgian championships. Now
beat Jasper Philipsen. Also, Lotto Destiny had like 19 riders in the Belgian championships. Alpecin had.
I'm sure they also had
20. Yeah,
I'm sure they all. But a lot of their guys are Dutch though. So in the Belgian champs, Lotto Destiny was the one, right?
Okay.
I think it was literally between the World Tour team and the development team. I think it was 19. Might have been 17. Anyway, it was a ridiculous number.
Does the development team also get to ride or not? Oh, they have to ride the more the.
I mean,
it's
it's nationals, right? Like, yeah, you can.
Yeah,
you can,
okay.
It's everybody. So Arnaud De Lee it was still a really good sprint, and head to head beat Jesper Philipsen in the most recent sprint that the two have had. So I think Arnaud De Lee is a really interesting one to keep an eye on, in particular because, as I said, we're in Italy. Those sort of like funky stages, Arnaud De Lee is a pretty good bet. He can get over a climb a bit better. He's a phenomenal classics rider. He's just a really strong rider. Like, you could even potentially see him do something in the gravel stage that's going to happen up in Troy. I think it's probably a bit too hilly for him, but you never know. He's a strong guy, right? So he's an interesting one. Dylan Groenewegen is back. Jake Ulul is probably their best shot at a tour stage win, I think.
Or Simon Yates, but yeah.
Yeah.
Or Michael Matthews? Are there any sort of
Matthews
Majev ones? Or?
Same thing as Arnaud De Lee, which is that they're sort of like funky finishes, the maybe sprint finishes Michael Matthews has always done really well at. He certainly can't be counted out. Alexander Kristoff is back. He hasn't won a sprint in quite some time. He apparently tried some altitude training. I'm not sure he liked it.
No, he didn't.
Yeah.
And it was... I think he went because he's like, otherwise I'm just doing the school run every day and it's just not good for being a professional sportsman. I was like, yeah, fair enough. He's like, then he went to altitude and I think it just either didn't, I can't remember exactly what it is. Ian will be able to tell us when he arrives. But it either didn't work for him or there was some other sort of complication. But Alexander Kristoff has won.
Yeah.
When did he won that 2020 Open Tour stage when it was a sprint there, wasn't it? In Nice?
Yes.
No, yes.
Yes.
It's all falling in on me.
A couple other names worth mentioning in the same mold as Arnaud De Lee and Matthews is Benny Girmay.
Oh, nice.
He can win a really, really hard sprint. Doesn't tend to win just sort of the pure fast drag races, but if it's a little bit uphill, and we do have a couple that sort of fit that definition, I think Girmay is a really interesting one to keep an eye on. And then two more sort of traditional sprinters. Sam Bennett is back at the tour with Decathlon Agile Desert, and Fabio Jakobsen.
No shine for Mads Pedersen here.
Probably should have shined for Mads
He
Pedersen.
usually wins the stage.
He does. He almost always wins the stage. Yeah, and that's Little Trek is interesting because it basically kind of built around Pedersen and a little bit of Giulia Ciccone. Ciccone actually had a really good run into the tour. Really solid Dauphiné. But I think realistically, Trek comes out of this race pretty happy if they get a stage win.
Yeah, well, because Theo Gegenhardt had to not come to the start because of a mixture of COVID and other injuries.
He broke a rib at the Dauphiné as well. Yeah.
More bad luck, unfortunately.
More bad luck for them.
The one sprinter who's also beaten Jesper Philipsen recently is Tim Malia, but he's not here because he has to make way for Remco Evenepoel and all of his mountain domestiques.
Yep. And then, of course, Mark Cavendish.
Oh, Mark Cavendish.
So
with Cheese Bowl?
He's got Cheese Ball at his side.
Love it.
That's Case Bowl, who we call Cheese Ball, because that's kind of how his name's spelled. And, of course, Michael Morku. And I think...
Battistella? No. Not Battistella. It's the one who was at Quick Step, Davide Ballerini.
Ballerini, Case Bowl. I mean, so this it's a pretty solid lead-out team. Like, if you're just looking purely at lead-outs, Astana's actually...
And they've had a year to practice now.
A year to practice.
So really...
There's 8 opportunities.
Is Renshaw still involved?
I believe he is.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, this is it. I don't think there's another year of Mark Cavendish being like, I'll just come back next year. I think this surely is it.
I mean, I was reminded watching the Unchained series that Cavendish did say last year was his last year.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm done. And then he wasn't, obviously.
If he wins, he's obviously definitely done.
Yeah.
But if he doesn't, does he... Depends if there's rumours that Vinokurov is thinking of selling Astana or their license to a Chinese team. So maybe we'll have Mark Cavendish at the Imperial Palace giving overtures to the Premier. But
do you think he can do it? Stage win for Cav?
For so many years, I've just been trotting down the Mark Cavendish number 35 beat, and I'm not sure if I'm just too long in the tooth now. Or if I really need to get into... Oh, sorry, Sir Mark Cavendish. I don't really like doing the whole Sir thing.
I mean, I'm not doing the Sir thing. But I think you have to.
I think I actually do. Otherwise, I think I get deported immediately.
The Queen... No, wait, the Queen's dead.
King comes and gets me with a big net.
Yep.
I mean, I think once we see a tour sprint stage, he's on the start line. When we see that bunch rush towards the line, I will want him to win.
I will want him to win. And I'm not even...
Like now,
British.
I'm like, there's other things occupying my mind. like the GC battle, which I find more interesting.
Is the way that I just sort of tossed out the queen is dead, is that considered rude where you come from?
No, I always forget. It's
okay.
fine. I saw him at the weekend anyway, and he looked so miserable. So I think he's got bigger.
You saw him. You just went and visited this little.
No, I was at a thing, and he went past in a carriage with his wife, who's now called the Queen. So that's the confusing thing, because they're the king queen. Usually they're not called.
There is
the Queen. His wife is the Queen.
What?
Yeah, he made her the Queen. Usually I think it's the Queen consort, which means you're married into it. Anyway.
I have no idea.
Anyway, it was weird. Sir Mark Cavendish.
Sir Mark Cavendish.
When I see that bunch sprint line, I'm sure many other people will feel the same.
Yeah.
You will. And he when he peeks his little head out and it's rattling around and he's like grimacing. And if he does do it, because the fact of the matter is there are far more better.
I think just better. More better is redundant.
God damn it. Better sprinters than him at this tour. Loads of them. Which makes it more impressive if he does do it.
Yeah.
Because it's not just like he's the best and just knocking out 5 or 6.
I mean,
and it's a strong field. Like when he won those ones before, it was kind of like the weaker field and he profited off that.
I mean, I maintain he could have beat Philipsen in that, what was it, stage
with the
13
chain
or whatever it was last, where he was having chain. It was 11. I can't remember what stage it was. Into Bordeaux.
Was his gear? Yeah, something to do.
His gears were skipping between the 11 and the 12, and so he can't really put any power down. And I maintain he could have won that one. And that was the opportunity. Anyway, Sir Mark Cavendish. Follow-up question. Other British journalists, if we go to the press conferences, like the big main ASO Tour press conferences, and Mark will be there for sure. I don't know why I'm just referred to him as, we're not on a first name basis, and he and I. Sir Mark. Will some of your countrymen, will they refer to him as Sir on the stage?
Good question. This is I should make a list of who does and doesn't, just for my own notes.
Adam Beckett.
I don't think so.
No.
Cycling Weekly's Adam Beckett. We should probably say
Cycling Weekly's Adam Beckett.
No. Who are the other Brits? Cycling News is Peter. What's his name? Editor guy.
Peter Stewart. He's not here. He's not here.
He's not coming? Okay.
Yeah. Ed Pickering.
Oh, good question. Because he does that, like, ruler is sort of all baked into that Britishness, and you probably have to kind of toe the party line a bit and all the airs and graces. I would say no.
We're just talking about our colleagues behind their backs.
Cycling News is Barry Ryan. Irish. Definitely not.
Definitely.
Maybe I'll do it.
I think it'd be funny.
Sir Mark. When people use Arise Sir Mark as the headline for him winning his 35th stage win, I'm going to throw up in my mouth. I'm just going to say it now. Whereas when Matteo Jorgensen wins his stage and zooms up the GC, we're going to do a Pledge of Allegiance.
Oh, we're gonna sing the whole pledge at the start of the podcast that day.
Yeah.
Yep. My country, 'tis of thee, etc., etc.
We're just watching women wash her hands in the fountain.
Yeah, there's a fountain. It's pretty nice. Other major
storylines.
Huge storylines. I got one for you.
Oh, go on.
We have one fewer blue team. We have one more blue team, potentially in Bora, and we have one fewer blue team.
We've got Visma as well.
Oh, Visma. So we have 2 additional blue teams.
Damn it. Okay.
But we lost one blue team.
Thank God.
Because Alpecin de Koning, which is the team of Philipsen and Mathieu van der Poel, they've gone from traditional blue denim to gray denim.
I was excited by how much you enjoyed this press release. I'm not sure if that's because, as a father of 2, you're very comfortably entering into your dad era.
Oh, for sure.
But they're doing it because they're trying to promote their new shampoo, which we are now also doing. So you're welcome. Which gets rid of your greys. And the best way, obviously, to promote a product for people with grey hair is put on a bunch of, like, in their absolute physical prime, sort of professional 20-year-old athletes.
The reason I loved this press release, the reason it was hilarious, is because it made it sound like aging was a disease that they were raising awareness for.
like the weird Bahrain beating diabetes thing.
Yeah, exactly. It was like one of those, the classic in cycling, right? Like Lance Armstrong raising awareness for testicular cancer with little wristbands, right? Like it kind of read like that, except it read like, all you people out there suffering from the disease of aging. Come get your Alpecin shampoo.
The cure. Finally, we have the cure.
You finally have the cure. Finally have the cure.
Also, sorry if you can hear the rain. It's turned from being the hottest day I've experienced so far this year into a shower. But everyone's still eating ice cream, so don't worry.
So obviously that's massive story.
That's massive story.
What else?
I'm looking forward to coming back into France, and we'll just get like a not quite doping raid, like straight off the bat.
Yep.
That would be good. Because we seem to be getting more of them these days, and it's kind of, it makes me feel like I'm actually at the Tour de France as it once was.
Well, so I guess one of the other sort of narratives here is this connection between the 1998 Tour de France and this Tour de France. And then primary connection is Pantani, who won that race. It was the second in the Giro Tour double, right? It was the last time the Giro Tour double was accomplished. We head to his place of death. I don't know how else to put that in a nicer way, but yeah, we're headed to where he died in a hotel room. And yeah, we've got this sort of like nice little through line. Not nice. There is a through line here between that race and this race. And of course, the other thing that happened in 1998, Festina Fair.
Jeez.
Which, by the way, I'm working on a sort of 3 or 4 part podcast series on the 1998 tour because I think it's time. I think we can look back at it.
Yeah.
And it's just a wild tour. That was a wild tour.
Well, look, the Festina stuff's not going to be covered in the traditional homage of what the tour's doing this year with Pantani. That's just about as much doping as they can officially take.
Yeah.
So then it's up to you and to us to provide the other, the alternate real history.
I feel like it's long enough ago now that we can talk about it in a sort of like, wow, that was crazy kind of perspective.
I want to find out more about it, to be honest. Like, it's outside of my,
Yeah, like the
knowledge.
sort of like millennial Tour de France watcher was, 10 or whatever, 12 years old when that. I was 10 years old when it went down, right? So yeah, I'm kind of going back and learning some things about it because I was following cycling. My dad was into cycling. I was watching the Tour de France, but I was 10, so I wasn't paying that close of attention. I'm going back and learning a fair amount about it, and yeah, it's a fascinating story. Anyway, that was a bit of a tangent.
Yeah.
Point being, I've got this kind of through line between the 98 Tour, Pantani, this Tour de France, Pantani. To return to your question about, or wasn't a question, it was a comment about doping raids. I mean, the Festina Affair kicked off because of European borders. We don't have those really anymore. We just crossed one 10 minutes ago.
Yeah.
And
nothing happened.
But you never know. Head back into France.
Yeah.
Little
knock on the door.
Little check on the way to the Galibier.
Something chucked out of a hotel window. No, it doesn't happen like that anymore, does it? It's too more sophisticated now.
Wow. I guess that's the other story we could talk about in this episode. We didn't talk about Piccolo yet.
Oh, yeah. Well, that is an interesting one. So, briefly, I'll try and get this right. It happened after sort of Europe had gone to bed, really, on Friday night, is that EF released a statement saying that Andrea Piccolo had been fired from the team after he was reportedly caught with human growth hormone passing through an airport.
Suspected of transferring human growth hormone from Colombia back to Italy. Yeah. And it's a wild story, not least of which because EF is sort of like, it's known as this anti-doping team, right? I mean, Wouters quite famously back in the day said that if his team ever had a doping positive, he would shut down the team. He doesn't actually own the team anymore, so if people are wondering why that hasn't happened, it's not actually his decision anymore. But yeah, it's a big deal for that team in particular. I was listening to our friends on the cycling podcast this morning, and Mitch Docker is on that pod during the tour here,
and he's on that team.
And so that was an interesting perspective from him, which is like when you see that as a teammate, it's just heart wrenching, right? Like you don't know if your team's going to fold, you don't know what's going to happen, and I'm sure that Piccolo is probably not the most popular man, not only with Jonathan Wouters, but also with his teammates at this point in time. And the question for me is, HGH is like, that's some old school shit right there. Like that is old school doping. It was generally back in the day taken as like a sort of a cocktail with a whole bunch of other stuff.
It's like get your pot belge out, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like it's. I mean, we're talking old school stuff here, right? Like in theory, from what we understand, that this is not the sort of thing that is a common occurrence in modern cycling. So what else is going on here? Was he just getting this stuff for himself? Was he a courier? like what exactly was going on. I think that we're going to find out more on this front in the coming weeks.
It's tough as well because they're a team that when you brand yourself as sort of family friendly, definitely, outwardly anti-doping, which not all teams do, then it makes it easier for those teams that are viewed in a certain light to sort of pass that off. And it's probably good, important caveat to say that, like, we'll cover this story. We are also like close with like quite a few people on that team. So it's like, it's a tricky one to navigate, but it's hopefully it means that we get a bit closer to it and can actually let you know what's going on. I don't know. Don't know if that happened.
I guess the latest update on that, which a lot of you probably would have read because it came out about 24 hours after the story broke, was that this wasn't random, right? It's funny because I had guessed this based off of watching a reality TV show about the Rome airport customs. I can't remember where I was watching this.
See, in the UK, we get UK and Australian border force. Do you get American and Italian? Because that's a weird...
I can't remember why or where I was watching this, but I was watching this. And so I knew that most of the time when they sort of do these busts, like, you and I came in, we flew into France today, right? Like, no one's checking us at the customs thing. Like, all the customs dudes were like looking at their phones as we walked by.
Would you check me? Come on.
Would you check Andrea Piccolo? He doesn't exactly look sketchy, right?
I don't know. His Instagram is a bit sketchy.
He's like a 5'6" Italian.
His Instagram, I'm checking everything he's got.
Anyway, point being that the UCI issued a brief statement on Saturday noting that this was a targeted thing and that it was, quote, the search conducted on the rider is the result of an investigation led by the International Testing Agency, the ITA, and its close collaboration with the National Anti-Doping Organization of Italy, NATO Italia, and Italian law enforcement authorities, the Carabinieri. The Carabinieri are the scary cops here in Italy. They're like the gendarmes.
Oh, dear.
In France. I mean, don't tweet at me with the specifics of how those two are different, but from my perspective, they are the scary cops. They have guns and things.
Slightly more village people, but can deliver death unto you.
Yes, exactly. So, and that tends to be the way that these things happen these days, is they are mostly via police action versus like WADA or testing or, I mean, other than claimed alleged like contamination, not that much getting picked up in testing anymore, right? It's mostly via police action. So this was another instance in the same mold. And like I said, we'll keep an eye on it. It's a crazy, wild story. There is definitely more to the story.
Yeah.
I think that's we don't know what that more is just yet, but there is enough sort of weird hanging loose ends here that there's other things coming. And I think that because this is a police action, it's going to move really slowly. It's going to move through courts, but it will also mean that a lot more of it is public than would be with an anti-doping action, which tends to keep stuff a bit more under wraps.
Least expected pre-tour doping story.
Yep.
By a landslide.
Let's wrap up today's episode with just a brief reminder of what is coming over the next 3 weeks from us. We're going to be having tour dailies. So you're getting this on Thursday. The sort of official tour dailies will start on Friday before the race. We'll be doing one every single day between now and the end of the Tour de France, including rest days. But the rest day pods are for members only.
Gotcha.
So if you want those, head over to escapecollective.com/member and sign up. You also won't get hit by the paywall all month, which is very good.
Yeah.
We're going to be writing hundreds of stories over the next 30 days or so. We're going to be having sort of special bonus bits of the daily episodes as well. So if we have a really interesting interview or just some other bit of insight, we might stick those in the members only sections. So you'll get those, plus the members only episodes on rest days, plus no paywall, plus access to our Discord, which is super, super active, particularly during the tour.
Yeah,
lots of folks chatting about the racing every single day. It's a super fun community. So make sure you head over to escapecollective.com/member and sign up. And finally, you can sign up for this month for $1.
Whoa.
Hello, dog.
Dog's a fan. Was the dog barking because he couldn't believe how cheap it was?
Could not believe how cheap it was.
Wow.
Yeah, $1. So come check it out. Get full access to everything for $1.
Yeah.
Come see what we do. We think you'll stick around.
Wow.
Fingers crossed.
I'd like to think so.
All right. So that's it from us, from whatever town we're in.
It's now a rainy seaside town.
The
Looks
rainy
different
Mediterranean.
without the sun out
Yeah.
slightly. Was slightly distracted over the first half of the podcast because I was watching a man who's now gone from the other side of the road, who was putting these small trees into bin bags that couldn't really fit. And then to make them really fit in the bag, he was just like thwacking them around on the ground. And it was while we were trying to talk about, I think it was Juan Ayuso, and I was trying to listen, but also like, what is he doing? So it's already started.
Yep.
Europe's already Europing.
We're Europing. Stage 1, Florence to Rimini.
We're gonna have
seven categorized climbs.
Oh.
Bunch of Cat 2s, bunch of Cat 3s. That's like an Alberto Bettiol or maybe even like a Pidcock.
In the Tricolore.
That'd be amazing.
Wow.
Pidcock probably not hard enough for this. I can see Pidcock winning the Valois stage. If he can hang on to the Glibier, it's literally like you go over the Glibier, then you drop down the scary side, and then the finish is at the bottom. So it's a perfect Pidcock day. Stage 2, Cesenatico to Bologna. Beautiful, beautiful stage. Again, lumpy. I think we could see a late move or even a breakaway. Stage 3 should be a sprint, Plaisance to Turin. I just said that like it's French. I don't think. How do you say that? How do you say Plaisance with an Italian accent? Plaisance?
I don't know.
Plaisance?
I don't know Italian.
Neither
It's
of us
really
speak any real Italian. To Turin, 230k day. That's like a classic.
Yeah, that's
Classic.
like sleep until 3:30.
Yeah, wake up for the end of it. And then stage 4, Pinerolo to Valois, the first big mountain stage. They basically climb all day. 2 Cat 2s and then an HC climb over the Glibier and then dropping down into Valois. So that's the first 4 days. We'll continue to preview as we go here. The final announcement, I guess. If you are around,
Oh yeah,
first of all, jump on the Discord because we've got a special Discord channel called Press Pass where we are dropping sort of like little stuff that maybe isn't quite full story worthy in there, but we're also announcing like when we're doing rides and when we're grabbing drinks and things like that. So in Florence for the start here, we've got a group ride starting 8 a.m. Friday morning right in front of the main entrance at the Duomo in Florence. Thanks to Escape member Mark for setting this up. I will be there with my bike. You don't have a bike, sorry. But I'll be there.
I'm not ready for that.
We're going to go ride. It'll be about 50K, about 1,000 meters of climbing. So it'll be a solid morning.
Too solid for me.
And then we'll head on back and, I got to go do press conferences and do some work and things like that. But yeah, if you are around, if you're in Florence, join us. We'd love to go for a little bike ride with you.
We're going to have some friends joining this weekend as well. Have you announced who they are, or are we going to leave that a secret?
Yeah, let's just get all out there.
You don't want people to have the element of surprise. Maybe some old favorites return.
Some old favorites will return. You may have noticed the conspicuous absence of Ian Trelawney.
We can say
today.
he is coming.
He is coming, but he's not coming till stage 7?
I think
5?
so.
4?
5?
6?
Next Thursday or Friday.
It's very confusing to me because the stage and the date are one off for most of the beginning of the race.
Last year, I think it all matched up. And it was perfect.
But then they go off. They get off once the rest day happens.
Yeah.
Anyway, I can't remember. You may hear me misidentify some stages and/or dates because of this. Anyway, Ian shows up sort of end of the first week. Ronan will be here.
Yes.
For the Friday, Saturday episodes. And then there's one other special guest who we'll just leave as a surprise.
Yeah. Wonder who it could be.
All right. Welcome back to the tour, everybody.
Woo!
It is time. We're going to go drive the rest of the way to Florence.
Yes.
We'll see you tomorrow.
Here we go.
Tour Daily.
Arrivederci?
Arrivederci.
That's what you say, isn't it? Yeah.
A dopo.